Hey guys, it's AC. Welcome to my house, and today we're going to talk about 1031 exchanges. I'm going to teach you why a real estate investor really needs to understand this great method to defer or snowball your capital gains taxes into another property, a bigger property, and why you would want to do that. I'll walk you through in a spreadsheet exactly why this will 10x your wealth as a real estate investor. First, let's understand the difference between short-term capital gains tax and long-term capital gains tax. Just like a stock, if you sell it and you've owned it for 365 days or fewer, then you have to pay taxes at a higher rate than if you own that stock for 366 days or longer. That's the difference between short-term and long-term capital gains tax. So typically short-term is about 20 to 35% tax rate, while long-term is about 15% tax rate. Now, real estate operates in the exact same way. If you own a property for less than a year, you get short-term capital gains tax on it, and that is a higher rate than long-term capital gains tax. So the 1031 only applies for properties you've owned for over a year. So if you have a wholesale deal or a flip that you're working on, or some sort of short-term property ownership where you've increased equity greatly and you're trying to sell it quickly, this is not going to apply for you. This is going to be something you've bought and held on to, and you've rented it out for over a year, and this has just been a rental for you, and you want to sell it because it's appreciated in value. So let's get into the spreadsheet, and I'll show you the magic that a 1031 can do for you and your rental properties. So here we are. We're going to look at your income because this is going to determine what you're taxed at. If you make less than $40,000 a year, you don't need to worry about a 1031. You're not taxed any long-term capital gains tax. So you can stop the video right here. You don't need to know about 1031. However, if your income's between $40,000 and $441,450 a year, then this video applies to you in that you'll be taxed 15% on the sale of that property. Now, if you make more than that, you'll be taxed 20%, and you really want to pay attention to this video because this will teach you how to save a lot of money on the sale of that property. So we're going to take a fictitious rental property that you own, and we're going to assume you bought it for $350,000, and you're able to sell it now 10 years later for $500,000. So here's the numbers on the spreadsheet. You purchased it for $350,000, sold it for $500,000. Your gain's roughly $150,000. You're taxed 15% of that. That's $22,500, and your proceeds are $127,500. This is quick back of the envelope math on this property. This is really not the real math on this, but if you just want to quickly understand what you'd be taxed and how much profit you have and what you can sell a property and run away with, well, this is how you would do it. I'm going to take it now a step deeper to really sort of understand how you would calculate your profits on a rental property. So what that is, when you bought this property for $350,000, you didn't buy a house for $350,000. You bought a house, and then you bought some land that comes with that house. So if that house burns down, you still have something of value because that land is there, right? So on tax benefit, so when you do your taxes, you can calculate how much the house is worth and how much is the land underneath it worth. What I'm going to do is do an 80-20 split. 80% of that $350,000 purchase price was for the house, and 20% of that purchase price was for the land underneath it. So with the depreciation, you can say my house is deteriorating in value. But the tax laws say you can depreciate that over 27.5 years. So you just take that 80% of $350,000, divide it by 27.5, and this is how much the home decreases in value every year in the IRS's eyes. So I put that in the spreadsheet. That works to $10,182. You can see my formula here. If you take $350,000, 80% of that, and divide it by 27.5, I can deduct $10,000, $182 a year, and that the home is deteriorating. This is a benefit because if I was making $10,000 a year in cash flow, I can say, well, it was also losing $10,000 a year in depreciation, so I don't need to pay taxes because this home's actually losing money. So that's sort of like a tax loophole that real estate investors use all the time. But in this example, let's say we've owned the property for 10 years. That number multiplied by 10 means we've told the IRS over the past 10 years that this house has decreased in value $101,000 and some change. So in IRS's eyes, is we're not selling an asset that's worth $350,000. They're saying, wait a minute, you told me that this went down in value $10,000 every single year. So you're actually selling something closer to $250,000. And they would be right. We've told them that this is depreciated and it's no longer worth $350,000. It's worth $248,182. So that is called the adjusted down cost basis. There's plenty of other scenarios that would adjust this cost basis down. I'm not going to cover it in this video. I'm just walking you through typical examples so you can kind of get your head around a simple idea on how the basis of a house is calculated, because that basis determines how much you're taxed. So in this case, it's the adjusted down cost basis. Now let's talk about the adjusted up cost basis. This is a way you've improved the value, money that you put in to improve the property. And you want to say, wait a minute, I'm not selling an asset for $250,000. I actually put some money in to improve this property. And don't forget about those dollars that I put into this investment. So in that case, we can say, well, I put $50,000 of home improvement in this property. Maybe I added an addition. I put a master bedroom suite with full bathroom, walk-in closets off the back. I put on a new roof, poured a new driveway, whatever. I spent $50,000 improving this property. So I am not selling an asset for $250,000 because I put $50,000 of my own money into it. Also, I had something redone. My basement flooded, but my insurance company paid me $10,000 to redo the basement. So don't forget about that amount of work that went into it. So I've actually improved the value of my property $60,000, $50,000 for the master bedroom suite and all the other stuff I've done, plus the $10,000 my insurance company gave me to improve the property. So I've actually spent $60,000 improving the value. And then the IRS says, okay, now we're getting a closer idea of what this property that you're selling is worth, which is the basis. Okay, you've told me it dropped in value $100,000, but you put $60,000 into fixing this up. You put that all together, the IRS is saying, great, you have a $308,000, 182 property that you're selling for $500,000. Let's base the taxes on that spread. So if we look at it through that lens, it's our numbers here. Sale price, $500,000. Our gain is $191,000 because we're selling an asset worth $308,000 in the IRS's eyes for $500,000. We made a gain of $191,000. Taxed at 15% on that gain, it's $28,773. Our proceeds are $121,227. So up here, back of the envelope, $127,500. That's a very rosy picture. Down here, it's $121,227. Now, we didn't account for realtor fees and closing costs and all these other expenses that would take out of the profit that we made. But just know it goes a little bit deeper than what I'm showing you here. But I just want to kind of show you some of the big numbers to account for. Okay, so we get to the closing table, and you have two choices. I want to take this money, $121,000 after taxes, and let's go buy another property with it. Or you can go buy a new car, or pay off some debts, or do some home improvements on your primary residence. Whatever, this is a way to figure out how much you're actually going to be taking away from the closing table. But option B would be, wait a minute, let's grow this money. Let's turn this into something bigger using a 1031 like kind exchange. So with a 1031, you just have to agree to buy something of equal or greater price. We're selling this for $500,000. We have to reinvest this property into something else that's $500,000 or more. And if you do that, you don't have to pay this 15% gain or $28,000. You're basically reinvesting that $28,000. The IRS says, okay, he's selling his house not to make a profit. He's selling his house to reinvest it into another investment, and we're okay with that. We don't need to take taxes. That's the 1031 exchange. Snowball, defer those tax gains into that next property, and we'll collect that tax down the road. Not a problem. So if we do that, we take this $121,000, that was our proceeds, and we get to add in our taxes that were taken out, $28,000, and that gives us $150,000 that we can 1031. We have to use it all. And if we reinvest it all, we can take that $150,000 and use that as a 20% down payment on a new property. So 20% is times 5. So you take that 155, multiply it by 5 to see what you can purchase with your replacement property. Well, that value is $750,000. 20% of $750,000 is $150,000. So what you just did right now is you sold a property for $500,000. It was a property worth $500,000. You rolled up all the proceeds of it and exchanged it for a $750,000 property, and you brought no extra money to the table, right? You just moved it from one property to the other because that equity is now 20% down payment on a much larger property. You might have some closing costs and mortgage fees, but if you do this with a little effort in your math, you can roll up your property to a much larger property with no extra money added to the deal. So this is the benefit of 1031. You took a $500,000 property, swapped it for a $750,000 property. Why wouldn't you do that? I would do this all day. A lot of people would say, I'm going to hold my property forever. I'm never going to sell. I'm going to hold it for 30 years, 40 years. That doesn't make sense to me. You can only depreciate for 27 and a half years. So minimum, sell it after 27 and a half because you start losing those tax breaks. But all day I'll sell a property that I can flip it into a bigger property. I'm just going to make sure my cash flow is the same. I might have $500 a month in cash flow in this $500,000, but if I 1031 into $750 and I still get $500 a month in cash flow, why wouldn't I do that? Or why wouldn't I sell a single family property and turn it into a duplex that makes me more money, or a triplex? You know, these 1031 snowballs are great. And I think every real estate agent should look at it whenever they sell a property they've held long term. Now, something to consider. If you 1031 that property and then you take that property and 1031 and do it for a fourth time, you have this 4 snowball accumulation of taxes, and then you eventually go to sell, well, then you're going to have a big payday of all those taxes because all those taxes are going to come due on that snowball whenever you sell it and you try to touch the money yourself. But if you die and you've got beneficiaries or heirs, all this property goes to their heirs, and that snowball that you've accumulated of tax deferment goes away. It disappears. So this is the best way to leave property to your children or your beneficiaries without having to pay taxes or having them pay taxes. You snowballed all these taxes into bigger and bigger properties over your lifetime, and all that tax that the government thought they were getting down the road wiped away. So that's a huge benefit for the 1031 exchange. And these are the reasons why I think every real estate investor should understand it, know how to use it, and also know all the ins and outs of a 1031. The 3 must-haves you have to remember, though, for a 1031 to work are it must say in the contract that you're selling, this is for a 1031 exchange, it must have a QI, a qualified intermediary who's going to hold your funds. You can't ever touch the funds in a 1031. When you sell the property, this money has to go from the closing attorney to your QI, and then that QI sends that money to the closing attorney when you buy your new property. If you touch the property, it erases all these 1031 benefits, so you have to get a qualified intermediary to run this for you. Just search 1031 companies. There's a million out there that'll help you, or ask your real estate agent. Last thing to remember is when you're doing this, the clock starts ticking. You have 45 days to identify what property you're going to 1031 into. You have to actually put it in writing to your QI, and then you have 180 days to close on that property. So this is not holidays or business days. These are calendar days. So just know you can't just sell a property and sit back and relax. You have to be proactive before you sell. So you can put it in the contract, you can find your QI, and you also have to be proactive in identifying those properties immediately after you sell. And then you got to go out and buy one of those. So all this is to talk to your CPA, talk to a QI to help you navigate this process that can be complicated. But I just want to teach you the basics so you understand that this is a tool to have in your belt as a real estate investor. All this is in Housefire, my new book. It's also on my website, thehouseofac.com. Please come check it out. I am in the process of launching some podcasts and more training materials so that I can teach you everything I know about real estate so you can replicate this business for yourself and be financially independent and retire early. Thanks for checking out my videos. I'll see you next time on The House of AC.